Hi ladies and gentlemen, welcome back. Okay, at least one more video in this week. I so hope I can keep it up. Okay, as much as it pains me to do this, I believe we have to because something stinks. It stinks worse than a pigsty on a warm day. So let's talk about it. Bryan Kohberger, these preliminary hearings and motion hearings going on at the moment is really turning my stomach. One of the issues under discussion is the touch DNA on the button of the sheath. Now, touch DNA is as helpful as it is sometimes detrimental. Touch DNA is defined as body fluid, like sweat, or cells left behind when an object is handled by a suspect. Now that's very cool, but touch DNA has also complicated fingerprinting because if there isn't enough evidence, investigators are faced with a dilemma. Are we going to go after the fingerprint or are we going to go after the DNA? Because sometimes there isn't enough to do both, as in this particular case. What nobody wants to really talk about are errors occurring with or during DNA testing. And we are going to first talk about primary DNA testing, in other words, blood, saliva, sperm, etc. Now, here are a few examples of errors which can occur in the case of primary DNA testing. Number one, incorrect labeling of DNA samples. Number two, linking the incorrect profile to a given sample. Number three, incorrect transfer to the database. We're talking about things like typos, etc. Number four, correct transfer to the database, but labeled under a different name. Now, although the error rate is normally very low, mistakes do happen. Human error is a real thing. Now, with that in mind, and we were talking about DNA derived from blood, saliva, remember, and other bodily fluids, imagine touch DNA. DNA which may not even be visible to the naked eye. DNA which could exist out of a single usable skin cell or minute drop of sweat, or even, left by a damp finger. The problem with that is not only often the choice between fingerprinting and DNA, but touch DNA is usually a minute amount of DNA. The other issue is that it could have come from direct or then primary source or through secondary transfer via another individual or object. There is, as of right now, no simple way to determine which type of transfer occurred, and this increases the risk of misidentifying individuals for crimes they did not commit. And it is especially dangerous given the weight DNA currently carries in court. Now, I can read you examples from the document I downloaded, but let's use Bryan Kohberger's scenario with a knife sheath. Yes, the touch DNA could have landed on the sheath because Bryan Kohberger took the knife out of the sheath at the crime scene. But Bryan Kohberger could also have been in a shop or a store and looked at it, decided not to buy it, and put it back. Or a student could have showed it to him, or he could have touched someone or somebody else, and that person could have transferred it to the button on the sheath. Does that sound impossible to you? No, it isn't. I mean, let's say my daughter uses those household style gloves to wash the dishes. She leaves it on the side of the sink and one falls off. I walk past it, pick it up by one of the fingers and put it back. Next, someone takes those gloves and go and commit a crime with it. Neither my fingerprint nor the criminal's will be left behind, but my DNA may be left behind. It may be a tiny, tiny little speck, but yes, it is still my DNA. However, I was nowhere near the crime scene. If something like that should ever happen to any of us, we better hope and pray we have a darn good alibi, and not just that we were alone at home or alone driving somewhere like Bryan Kohberger. Ann Taylor is, however, not arguing that Bryan Kohberger's DNA could have gotten there by some other means. No, she's instead arguing that Bryan Kohberger's DNA was obtained illegally through familial DNA, and that particularly frustrates me a bit because I feel she should have and could have argued both. But let's quickly look at the legality of how they obtained Bryan Kohberger's DNA. You see, I think where both Ann Taylor and the judge missed the boat is the matter of a reasonable expectation of privacy. I think in America it is a federal crime to steal someone's mail. So why is it not a crime to steal, take without permission, someone's DNA? The judge said that once that DNA leaves your hands and you send it to someone, you no longer have an expectation of privacy. But what the judge forgot is how the DNA got to the familial genealogy or ancestry DNA site. And I would say, number one, like via the mail, or number two, via a courier. Same thing, same expectation of privacy. It's like mailing a letter or mailing a bill or mailing a gift, okay? It is illegal to take that gift or that piece of mail, open it and keep it for yourself if you had obtained it without permission and it wasn't addressed to you. So isn't that what happened to the familial DNA? But let's just carry on for now. You see, the judge also said that if Bryan was the one leaving that DNA on that knife sheath at a crime scene, then he has no expectation of privacy. But the problem is that it wasn't Bryan's DNA they found in the familial or ancestry site or group or whatever, but it was his father's, and his father was 100% nowhere near the crime scene. So did Bryan's father not have a reasonable expectation of privacy when he returned, most likely via mail, his DNA to whatever ancestry site he used? Because at the time of testing the DNA, Bryan's identity was, well, it might have been known to them, but they weren't sure whether he was the perpetrator. It was still in the beginning stages of the investigation. So one could say that Bryan's identity was not 100% known to them yet. And because there was the possibility of a privacy issue versus this particular horrific murder of 4 people, to cover all bases, it would have been in the interest of the police to have legally obtained a warrant. The same applies to the trash at Kohberger's home. Yes, if you discard something, put it in the trash and put the trash outside your yard, you no longer have a reasonable expectation of privacy. But does that include your DNA, which you did not willfully and intentionally discarded? This case, in my opinion, opens a whole can of worms, and I'm going to end this by saying what I've said before. I have still not been convinced that Kohberger committed the crime. Next time we'll go through all the rubbish which was long ago proven to be false or incorrect, but which people are still bringing up as fact and proof of Bryan Kohberger's guilt, and which at the moment drives me up the walls. So let's address that next time. So until then, please take good care of yourselves. Bye.